install it yourself versus having it installed and what that cost would be? Because my impression from listening to Councilor Clark was that people like these elderly population were upset because there was a $39.95 charge, and they didn't feel that that was fair. So was that included in the notice to people? Is it, I'm assuming it may not have been, and maybe that's why there's kind of this backlash or this, that's not the right word, this reaction that is not favorable.
I don't know. I saw the notices that went out to the city itself, but I didn't see a customer notice.
Well, I suggest it was probably, you know, your bill is 3 inches thick with all kinds of stuff, and you write the check and don't read through it. I guess for the city attorney, so what we're saying here at the end of the day is that with our agreement, the way it is now,
I'm sorry.
we good? Okay. With the way it is now, Time Warner is compliant with what they need to do and can do with the agreement as written.
That's my assessment, and just so the committee is aware, I did have this conversation with Rob Chandella. Mr. Chandella was the attorney that was obtained by the city back in 2003. That's the effective execution date of the agreement. So he was on board before that to assist the city in the negotiations with respect to the franchise agreement. So I did talk with Mr. Chandella about this particular issue and its effect under the agreement. One of the first things he said to me was, you know, this is occurring all over the state and everywhere that Time Warner has a service, and they've been getting the same kinds of calls from other jurisdictions. And Mr. Chandella's representation to me and his opinion was that they are proceeding in accordance not only with the franchise agreement, but also with the requirements of the FCC at this point. There is one thing I would like to point out in terms of the agreement, and it did cause, because I stumbled over it too, and I thought, oh gee, this is pretty broadly written. Under Article 6, rates and charges, 6.1b, what the language says is the city shall have the right, to the extent granted under state law, the Cable Act and FCC regulations. Here we are, we have incorporated all of those, to regulate rates, equipment, installation services, and charges to subscribers. So when I first looked at that provision, I was like, oh, that's fairly broadly written. You know, what authority does the city have to do that? Well, in reality, this is not what's called a self-operating provision. It's fairly boilerplate language that was put into the agreements. In order for the city to do what is suggested in that sentence, you have to go to the FCC and become a regulatory body, which is a very expensive proposition. Nobody does it. So I did want to clear that up because I know that I did have some conversation with some of the councilors about that provision. But at least at this point, Mr. Chandella agrees with my assessment, and I did talk with him only after I had come up to speed with respect to this to the extent that I could, so that I could be knowledgeable, at least to that extent, in talking with him about it. And he agreed that it was not a violation.
Well, how about this? Let's say hypothetically we were renegotiating the franchise agreement. Could we request that either senior citizens or low-income citizens get a discount or pay nothing for this box or this conversion?
Yeah, I'm going to. My short answer to that is, you can attempt to negotiate anything you want. The longer answer to that is whether or not it complies with all of the other regulatory structure. I would not be prepared to be able to answer that.
Okay. City manager?
Well, I think actually the city attorney did give the answer that I would have given, which is we can ask for anything that we think is appropriate, and then have that conversation with Time Warner. They'll be very quick to let us know if we don't have the right to have it in the franchise agreement. But if it is something that's discretionary, certainly would preclude us from asking.
I mean, it seems to me that, you know, Time Warner's been, you know, they've said here that they're trying to do the right thing when they have somebody, they're trying to help them out. You know, people getting basic cable are typically either people who don't have a lot of money or elderly people who, those are the channels I want, and I don't have a lot of money, that's all I need. So as that number gets smaller and smaller, I don't know that it would be a terrible request to ask Time Warner if they can help us out. I know that we can't do that here on the floor, of course, but Please, John.
Mr. Chairman, we are in conversation with Time Warner now, and we're talking about a second peg access channel and several other details. I'd be happy to include this in our conversation and report.
All right. Further questions from the committee? I mean, ultimately, and we're open this to the public in a minute, but I suggest that we don't have a solid answer here, and we are